Good evening, everyone. As a reminder, our Contra Costa Health Services requirements, masks are required indoors for all persons regardless of vaccination status. And again, I fully acknowledge that some people have strong feelings about mask wearing. I recognize that not everyone agrees with the mask requirements, and I understand your frustration. That's why I would like to sincerely thank everyone in attendance for your cooperation in wearing your mask during today's meeting while in this building. Okay. Our meeting, I just want to let everyone know, is being live streamed on district's YouTube channel, and a link to the recording has been posted to the district website. I'd like to introduce my board members, Vice President Ken Mintz.
Good evening.
Clerk Rachel Hurd.
Hello.
Board Member Laura Bratt.
Good evening.
And Board Member Shelley Clark.
Good evening.
And Student Board Member Ronit Batra.
Good evening.
And I am your President, Susanna Ordway. Just so you know, our Student Board Member can cast a preferential vote, which shall not affect the final numerical outcome of a vote, but will be recorded in the minutes. Okay. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 6.0. There was no action taken in closed session. Okay, acceptance of minutes. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of October 4th, 2021, workshop October 5th, 2021, and October 15, 2021, special meeting?
So moved.
I'll second. The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then may I have a motion now to accept the open session agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Right. 8.2, approval of consent agenda. So consent items are considered routine in nature and are approved by combining them into a single vote. A member of the board or a member of the public may request that a consent item be removed from the consent agenda to be considered and voted on separately. So I do believe I have a couple of consent agenda items, right, to be pulled. I think it's Helena Doty Valley's pulling 12.3, 12.8, and 12.15. And so those will go under the 11.0. No, sorry, 10.0 action items. Yes, yeah, not finished yet, yes. So that's for her. And then, yes, from Susan, yes. 12.4. Okay. Okay, yeah, it says 12.4 here, but 14. And we'll move it to, okay, so then it'll go also under 11 or 10 point.
So
Or
Susanna,
then-
will we take those in order after 10.1?
Yes, so it'll be 10 point, after 10.1, then we'll take it in order. 12.3 will become 10.2, 12.8, will be 10.3, 12.14 will be 10.4, and 12.15 will be 10.5. And I believe that's the only, right, those are the consent items being pulled.
Okay.
So I'll move approval of consent as amended.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batcha.
Aye.
Student Board Member, Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great. Thank you. Okay, now 9.0 reports to the board. 9.1, we have Executive Director Nadine Rosenzweig to help us with the Contra Costa County Teacher of the Year, Michelle Wilson.
Good evening, members of the board, trustees, Superintendent Malloy, assistant superintendents, and members of the community. This is the exciting part of my position. So our Teacher of the Year, back in March of 2021, we came to you virtually to share that Michelle Wilson was one of the finalists at the secondary level for Teacher of the Year. And I'm thrilled to report that not only was she selected by Contra Costa County as one of the reps, she went on to the state and was a finalist for that. So we're so proud of her. She was the principal, Evan Powell, is here, and her family, her two daughters and husband. And Michelle teaches at Doherty Valley High School. She's an English teacher. I had the opportunity to visit. She is exceptional. Everything we wrote, she's instrumental in creating a dynamic, engaging, and collaborative of all those students. They were on task. They were following you, dialogue back and forth, just enriching. They held their cards up to speak and to share their perspective of a classic, Romeo and Juliet. And it was just delightful I had read the book and I wanted to participate, but we are so thrilled the diversity in your classroom, the respect, just the engagement between you and your students is just what we're all here for. So on behalf of the board, we wanted to present you with that. And I know you wanted to share a few words about your experience. And we're so excited that her daughters are here to see mom in action of what she does. Take it away.
Dutifully writing journal. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the board members, Dr. Malloy, district staff, and the community present here for this recognition. It has been and is an absolute honor for both the county and the state level to represent the San Ramon Valley Unified School District and the incredibly talented teachers I've worked with and have been inspired by during my time here. So much of what I've been passionate about in teaching has been introduced to me and nurtured in this district. The power of student voices, equity, authentic learning, grading reform. I'm especially honored to represent a district that is committed to educational evolution over tradition and is willing to give teachers the systemic power and creative space to do what is needed to help all of our students succeed. This journey has also allowed me to turn an eye on our community, recognizing that the success of a school district and the teachers within it reflects the strength of the community at large. I see in our families one of the most important steps to learning, a belief in the power of education. My students are infused with this belief and supported by the healthy, loving neighborhoods in which they live. What an honor it is to teach in this school community. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank who is really the heartbeat and the muse to what I do each day, my family. One of my favorite and most inspiring high school teachers, my senior English teacher, Mrs. Drake, told me that in order to do something well, you need to exude passion. And in order to be an effective teacher, I believe that passion is the most important ingredient. So I want to thank those that motivate this passion within me the most, my mom and dad, who are watching in Montana on YouTube, I think right now. My husband, Dennis, my daughters, Ashlyn and Isla. Mom and dad, you lit the intellectual drive in me to change the world. Girls, you show me how special and exciting it is. And Dennis, you show me how truly incredible and exciting the world is around me. So thank you for being the loving family that inspires me every day to inspire others. Again, thank you, San Ramon Valley Unified School District, for this honor. I recognize with this comes a great responsibility. I look forward to representing and upholding the values that this district holds dear. So thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Should I bring my flowers? Should I bring the flowers?
No, once again, on behalf of the board and my board members, congratulations, Michelle. And yeah, we're very, very proud of you, and you deserved, this recognition for the county, to the county level. It's great. Okay, now 9.2, student donation or play foundation. So Dia Mendel is going to help us. Yeah.
Would you like them to present from here?
Sure.
Hi, everyone. We are sincerely thankful and honored to speak here and present our donation today. My name is Katie Zhang, and I am a senior at Doherty Valley High School. I am also the co-vice president of PLAY, which stands for Promoting Leadership and Aspiring Youth. So our foundation focuses on improving our members' teamwork, leadership, and public speaking skills. Our general mission is to teach the value of collaboration and leadership by encouraging our members to interact with the community. Currently, PLAY operates under 14 subgroups, which ranges from STEM subjects like math and coding to music, speech and debate, and writing and language, and even baking.
Our Play Foundation has many subgroups, and then each subgroup organizes many different events to help the community. For example, our music subgroup in the past year has held their 6th fundraising concert, and then along with our speech and debate and coding subgroups, they organize classes for the students of the community. And for example, I am part of the mobile library subgroup, and then we organize donations for our community, and we organize book checkouts. And then as a foundation and group, we are excited to contribute and help our community this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Augustina, and I personally lead the language subgroup under Play, where we try to help to expand the influence of the different languages in this multicultural environment we're in. We've also been helping to do translations of school documents and emails, and helping kids to learn the different languages.
Hi, I'm Bella, and sorry, I am the section group leader in BIC, Play BIC, which is what Augustina just explained. And I am the social media group leader, and I manage in social media accounts, and we make posters and we make announcements to to remind our group members. Thank you.
Thank you. And then there's a, right, yeah.
We do have a check of 2,500.
Oh, very nice.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, on behalf of, yes. Oh, yeah, I don't need. Yes, again, on behalf of the board and the district, thank you so much for Play Foundation and students who actually, um, you know, so actually, sorry, I trained my thought, presented a donation of such amount to the district. Thank you so much. I do have a public card, actually, a comment for this, Helen of Doty Valley, 9.2.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood this item. I thought a family was gonna donate like PlayStation, like video. So I was like, as a parent, I don't think I need more video time in school for my kids, but that's completely something else. Although I don't quite understand that either. But okay, anyways, that's not what I had in mind.
Okay. Okay, great. Then we'll move on. 9.3, Native American Heritage Month. And our Director of Education Equity, Hong Nguyen, is going to help present.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, staff, students, and community. My name is Hong Nguyen, and I'm the Director of Educational Equity. I'm here to present to you, November is Native American Heritage Month. We acknowledge that SRVUSD sits on the traditional lands of the Chochenyo, the Bay, Miwok, and the Ohlone people, and pay respects to elders in both past and present. We recognize that every member of SRVUSD community has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1964. Consistent with our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have the responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the district's relationship to Native peoples. As members of SRVUSD community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the first of the land in which we stand, but also we recognize that the Chochenyo, Bay, Miwok, and Ohlone people are alive and flourishing members of the San Ramon Valley and border Bay Area communities today. So how did we end up with Native American Heritage Month in November? In 1914, Reverend Red Fox James traveled 4,000 miles to Washington, D.C. to petition the president for a day to honor Native Americans. In 1968, California Governor Ronald Reagan designated the fourth day in September as American Indian Day. In 1990, President George H.W. Bush designated November as National American Indian Heritage Month. It is now called National Native American Heritage Month. We have a number of different resources to provide for teachers, staff, as well as for students to be able to look at for Native American Heritage Month to celebrate it. Did you know that in 2009, 27 human remains were found at San Ramon Valley High School during construction of their new gymnasium? It became an archaeological dig for Native American remains from over 200 years ago. It was a fascinating discovery. Our students and staff celebrate Native American Heritage Month through read aloud celebrations, projects, acknowledgement, research, and much more. Our goal is to promote learning of Native American people and history so we can become more appreciative and aware of the different cultures and traditions of the past, present, and future. We actually recently had a social studies pilot meeting, and our staff actually recognized our Native American peoples and also discussed ways to have different instructions to recognize cultures. November is Native American National Heritage Month, and we hope that you take some time to learn more about Native American history and cultures. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Hong. Okay, we do have a card for this item. Lynn, Doty Valley 9.3.
I want to say thank you very much to the school district. When my children were growing up during the third grade, the district teachers really helped my family get to know our Native Americans through social studies programs, specifically through field trips. So I want to take this opportunity today to encourage today's board to not be deterred by COVID, to please continue this program. I know that these days, because of all the COVID mandates and everything, it's probably really difficult to organize field trips. But I think the most sincere and honest and personal way to experience the American heritage, the Native culture way, is to do what they do and to experience what they experience. And unfortunately, this virus is working against that. So if we really mean it, I hope we can come up with creative ways to continue with field trips, especially to our younger grade students. It's very important. Thank you.
And 9.4, Red Ribbon Week. And our coordinator, Jessica Colson.
Good evening, trustees, Dr. Malloy, and staff members of San Ramon Valley Unified School District, and also community members who are here tonight. My name is Jessica Colson, and I am the coordinator for SEL and College and Career Readiness for the district, and I'm here to present to you tonight about Red Ribbon Week, which is currently happening. It's this week, October 23rd through 31st. We are all very excited about things that are happening, and I'm especially excited because I'm going to actually tell you about live things that are happening on our campuses this week. So Red Ribbon Week is sponsored by national, or it's supported by the National Family Partnership, which is one of the programs supported by them. Their other programs include the Red Ribbon Campaign, Red Ribbon Certified Schools, Lock Your Meds, and Safe Homes and Safe Parties. They work in the areas of advocacy at the local, state, and national level to bring these concerns to the table. They also promote awareness. Since 1985, they have been promoting awareness effects of drugs in America. And then they work constantly to update their resources that support all of the programs that I just mentioned. The theme for this year is drug-free looks like me. I love the little sunglasses and the thumbs. And this is what's happening at 2 of our middle schools. So at Iron Horse Middle School, they're having a Spirit Week in conjunction with Red Ribbon Week this week, and there's a different theme for each day. This is a clip from last year's yearbook where they did it in remote, and they had students submit pictures and send them in for the yearbook. And then a San Ramon police officer who is also a parent in the community will be speaking to 7th and 8th grade students about her experience with drugs and dealing with them in the community during the scope of her work. At Gale Ranch Middle School, these 3 pictures, the top and the 2 on the right, are submissions from last year's poetry and art contests. The little poster in the middle is a list of this year's contests, and it will be, in addition to the contests, they'll have LTA, which is a lunchtime activity, Stomp Out Drugs, where they're going to have balloons and other things on the quad that they get to stomp on and have a fun activity, a spirit day with red out, and everybody, the class in second period who wears the most amount of red gets the prize. And then also they are putting out informational videos on their Griffin News, which is their interior channel. And that is my presentation for Red Ribbon Week. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. 9.5 on our strategic directions, deep learning and innovation. So our Executive Director, Deb Pettish.
All right. Good evening, trustees, Superintendent Malloy, Assistant Superintendents, staff, students, and community. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with some additional information on the specific strategic direction of deep learning and innovation. And I will be highlighting the why and the what of deep learning, in addition to the long and short-term goals that we are proposing for ourselves, and then the outcomes that we are hoping to achieve. First, I would like to provide a bit of background information on deep learning and innovation. So, of course, and I'm sure this looks very familiar to all of you up there, of course, in June, you approved our SRVUSD strategic plan. Of course, included these 6 strategic directions: culture of responsiveness, shared leadership, stewardship of resources, equity, social emotional well-being, and then, of course, deep learning and innovation. So our deep learning and innovation strategic direction states that SRVUSD will create learning environments that empower students to take ownership over their learning in order for them to find purpose, meaning, and joy in their education and to excel in post-high school endeavors. So this particular slide highlights some of the things that students tend to experience when they're engaging in deep learning tasks. So for example, students tend to go beyond a surface level understanding of facts to develop a more nuanced and complex understanding of the subject area. They are provided with voice and choice about not just what they are learning, but also how they are learning it. Students are presented with complex problems that require the development of in-depth solutions. And then a key indicator of whether students are engaged in deep learning is whether or not they're able to take that understanding that they've developed, that deep understanding, and apply it to a novel situation. So before moving to the next slide, I really want to highlight that our teachers, our administrators, our paraprofessional staff, our counselors have done an amazing job always, but especially the last couple of years. And these things are happening across the district. And really what we're looking to do is just make sure that all students are able to experience deep learning and innovation in their classrooms. So really take what we're already doing, strengthen it, deepen it. So the why behind deep learning. So as you really already know, today's workplace tends to look a lot different than the workplace of even 10 years ago, let alone 20, 30, 40 years ago. So what I learned in school, for example, has somewhat become outdated, unfortunately. So the World Economic Forum developed a report called The Future of Jobs. And they stated that these are the top 5 skills that individuals will need in order to really succeed in the workplace by 2020, which seems like a long time from now, but we know it's really not. So our students will need to be analytical and innovative. They'll need to be active leaders who continue to seek knowledge. They'll have to have the ability to solve complex problems by being creative and thinking critically. So that's one of the whys when we ask why deep learning and why now. We know that the workplace is changing, and we want to be able to support our students in not just succeeding, but really thriving in those environments. The other rationale behind deep learning is really its connection, to the social emotional well-being of our students. And so really what this slide highlights is that the conditions of deep learning also tend to support the well-being of our students. Deep learning focuses on the student and values the thoughts, the ideas, the culture that they bring into the classroom. And it also focuses on the 6 global competencies, which I'll highlight on the next slide, which really prioritizes human connection, which of course, as you can imagine, really supports student social emotional well-being and health. So that is a really quick summary of the why behind deep learning, because I know we did a lot of this work in the spring. I also wanted to highlight once again the what of deep learning. And really at the heart of deep learning is this idea of these 6, what they call global competencies. So how do we build students' character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking? And as you'll notice, those particular skills or competencies or domains or whatever we want to call them are very similar. There's, of course, a lot of overlap with the slide that I showed previously with regard to what our students will need when they enter the workforce. So this slide represents the 4 elements that the research has shown that as a district, we really need to pay attention to in order to propel a shift in practice across the system. So this idea of building and nurturing learning partnerships, changing or augmenting pedagogical practices, the learning environment, the relationships that we're building in those environments, and then, of course, leveraging our digital technologies that we have at our fingertips. So I wanted to show you, let me pause that for a second. Sorry about that. So I think sometimes when I talk to individuals, or at least when I started out on this deep learning journey, it was sometimes hard for me to visualize what they were really talking about. And we partnered with an organization, and they have these really great short snippet videos that have really helped me, and I know some of my counterparts, visualize what deep learning is, what it looks like in practice. So it's just about 2 minutes, 25 seconds. So we'd like to show that to all of you.
My name is Steph Williams, and I teach core French from grades 1 to 6 at St. Louis School. This cool program is all based off of a website that we use in class called French Quest. The kids are all choosing different things that they want to do all at the same time.
It's really fun because we get a choice of what we would like to learn about. You don't have to do one thing. You can choose what you want to do. It's really changed up the French. There's a lot more electronics than there was before.
They can do movies or commercials, little skits using the green screen.
We acted out a cafe scene of ordering food and drinks.
French coding, we just switched the interface over to French.
If you write down like 10 left, 10 right, that would be 2 lines of code. I have the most lines of code in the class.
We started using the robots, where the robots have to go and find different French words and build a sentence.
Dash is a robot. Pretty funny one too. We code him to run over the word, and whoever gets the most words wins.
The kids have to read a French story. That story is of the robot that they have to build. We use Kahoot. The kids create quizzes about themselves or other things going on in the class.
Quelle équipe de l'hockey préférée? What is my favorite hockey team?
Bit strips to create comics, Puppet Pals to create interactive comics. We might have 2 activities going on at once, although 10 or 15.
It's nice to have options. It can help you learn new sentences if you try to speak in French and ask questions to one another. It was just a fun experience, but it was in French, so it was like a bit more fun.
The Idea Lab has been my support system through this.
There were some ups and downs, but we got through those.
This is my 5th year teaching here at St. Louis, and I have noticed a serious decline in behavior problems. We don't have a whole lot of kids that are going to start acting out when they're in control of their learning. C'est très important à apprendre le français et j'espère que les élèves continuent avec leur éducation française.
Okay, so hopefully you could see how that video, how that task really exemplified the principles of deep learning in a lot of different ways, especially you saw in terms of leveraging digital technologies. We saw it in terms of, collaboration and communication. We saw it in terms of them having to be innovative and think critically about their projects. And so really something fairly simple that is doable. Sometimes it sounds like it's out of reach, but it's doable. And I really, really like how they show these pretty simple examples of the way that kids can really engage in deep learning. So in our strategic plan, we have 3 goals related to deep learning and innovation. And these are our long-term goals. So over the course of the strategic plan, which we said was going to be about 3 to 5 years, we said that we would achieve the goals that are up on the screen. So create a coherent system that is aligned to support instruction, develop and implement instructional models to engage students in learning at deep levels, and then use authentic forms of assessment where students are expected to meaningfully apply essential knowledge and skills to new situations. So, of course, whenever we set goals such as that, we need to really decide what is our baseline data. What data, what information, quantitative, qualitative, are we going to use in order to determine where we are currently so that we can assess our progress over time? So when we set out to do this, we were able to do it. We were able to get baseline data to a certain extent because it's very difficult with our current measurements to really assess the extent to which our students are engaging in deep learning. So one of the things that we learned through this process is that we really need to either enhance or maybe even add additional assessment measures to really get at what we want to get at, to know if what we're doing is working. So that, of course, is something that we're exploring. However, we do have some more traditional measures that exist that do provide some insight into the extent to which our students are engaging in deep learning. And so by that, I'm really talking about, of course, our state standardized test, and then the Healthy Kids Survey that tends to measure student social emotional well-being. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I think you've all seen it before or seen the numbers before. Basically what this says is what we all know, which is San Ramon Valley Unified School District is high performing. Could we do better? Could these scores be higher? Yes, absolutely. And are we working towards that? Yes, absolutely. But for the most part, a graduation rate of 97.6, almost 80% of our students are college and career ready. And then give or take 80% are proficient in ELA and math on the CASP. So room for improvement, but a very, very good starting point. When we look at the Healthy Kids Survey, especially when we look at particular question groupings, we start to see a slightly different picture. And again, remember the earlier slide where I talked about the connection between deep learning and social emotional well-being. And so that's why we can kind of, instead of only using CASP to measure how our kids are learning, the extent to which they're learning, we can now use something like Healthy Kids because they're very much linked. So what this slide shows is the percentage of students over those 4 grade spans, 5th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, and 11th grade, over the course of 4 school years. We're missing 1 year. We chose not to do Healthy Kids a few years ago for whatever reason. But it's showing the percentage of students who feel that they are able to participate in school in meaningful ways. And of course, that's on a 100-point scale. So what you can see is that for the most part, we don't rise above 40%. And overall, for the most part, as time goes on, the percentage decreases. There are some exceptions, but that's for the most part. So what we're seeing here then is roughly on any given year, in any given grade, about 60% of students who do not feel that they are engaged, do not feel that for whatever reason they have opportunities or access to participate in meaningful ways. So what we hope to see over time with this particular indicator is for it obviously to go up. So as we engage students in more deep learning experience, they will feel like there's more meaningful participation in their classrooms. This information, this data is also from the Healthy Kids Survey, and it focuses on school connectedness. And so these numbers are definitely higher than in the previous slide, but you can still see where there's a significant portion of students who are not feeling connected to school. And again, for the most part, over time, it tends to peak in 5th grade and then go down over time until the kids get to 11th grade. So with deep learning, again, we're hoping to see these scores go up, that the kids are feeling more connected to their schools, to their classrooms, to their classmates, to their teachers, to the world in some ways, right, with these global competencies. So with our 3 to 5 year goals, those are some measures that we can use to assess the extent to which we've met our goals over time. But again, we do need additional measures. So what we really had to do with all of our strategic directions is say, okay, this is essentially a 3 to 5 year project. How can we create chunks so that we can really decide what are we doing in year 1, year 2, year 3, et cetera, to build up to the goals that I had on the previous slide. So when we did some research, particularly with regard to how you affect system-wide change for deep learning and innovation, we found this really simple diagram. And essentially what it's saying is the first step is clarity across the system. So again, what is deep learning? Why deep learning? Why deep learning now? Is there clarity across the system with regard to that? Second step, something we probably do in subsequent years, is depth of understanding. So do individuals really have a depth of understanding of how to implement deep learning tasks and innovation in their classrooms? And then finally, of course, sustainability. So once we have the clarity and the depth of implementation and understanding, how do we really sustain this and carry this on over time? Something else we considered when we developed the goals for the first year was this diagram that, of course, on the left here, you can see a lot of the work that we've already been doing. So work with essential standards across grade levels and subject areas. Work with the multi-tiered systems of support framework and interventions. Work with grading and assessment. We really feel strongly that that is going to inform the work that we do with deep learning and innovation. And in turn, an iterative cycle, our work with deep learning and innovation is going to enhance and really inform our continued work with the standards, the interventions, and the grading. So for lack of a better term, I kind of think about it as somewhat of a symbiotic relationship that we really want to nurture over time. So our goals for this school year. So our overarching goal, again, is to create clarity and develop the conditions for deep learning and innovation to occur. So what do we really mean by that? So we're really focusing on vision, leadership, and new measures and evaluations. So we want to create systemic awareness of the why and the what behind deep learning. We want to build leadership capacity, whether it's in our district administrators, site administrators, teacher leaders, paraprofessionals. Who's going to be leading this charge? And then, as I've mentioned earlier, explore more authentic forms of assessment based upon these agreed upon deep learning standards that we are creating. So what are we going to do to achieve those goals? I mentioned earlier the importance of learning partnerships, and I do have to thank Dr. Malloy for, he has a lot of connections truly all over the globe, and these have helped us tremendously. So we've become a partner in an organization called New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, which truly they're leading the way in this work. To say that is an understatement. They have schools all over the globe that are engaging in this work that we're going to begin to partner with. So it's great to learn from Akalani's or Dublin or Orinda or Pleasanton. That's wonderful. But how can we branch out a bit and really learn about what the leaders in this work are doing around the world? And then we've also partnered with an organization called Defined Learning. And they've developed some basically what we call deep learning curriculum. So units and lessons that the teachers can take that really embody the core principles of deep learning. And so we are going to choose some focal schools, or really they're going to choose themselves. So we're going to have some principals volunteer their schools to participate in a partnership with those two organizations, with us, of course, there to assist them in terms of like myself, maybe some directors, coordinators, to assist them in really digging deep into the work based on the interest the principal might have, their ability to do it this year, and maybe some teacher groups. They might have a third grade teacher group that's really, really excited, wants to dig in, or a high school science department that's ready to dig into the work this school year. And so those will be our focal schools, and we'll partner with those two organizations, develop the partnerships and really a cohort, so we can do that work together. We also felt it was really important to expand our understanding of deep learning and innovation. So we are doing lots of things, two of which are up there. We are engaging in book studies with fellow administrators and some teacher leaders like the MTSS liaisons. And we are also next week attending a conference, a global conference called Inspiring Our New Future and Purpose for Deep Learning. So I spoke about the focal schools. I also have mentioned the idea of developing authentic assessments. And really these assessments are twofold. One, again, is for us to better understand from a systems perspective how to evaluate this work going forward. And then one is really for the classroom. How do we create more authentic assessments that are truly getting at students' deep learning ability, the deep competencies, if you will. And then we're doing some things that I'm excited about all of it, and including number 5, because we have 2 pilots going this year. And so one is in elementary literacy, phonics in particular. So we will have, possibly for the first time ever, if not the first time in a long time, a consistent phonics program across grades and across schools. And that hasn't happened, at least since I've been here. That's my understanding. So really excited about that. And then elementary social studies pilot is also going on at the same time. So we'll really have high quality social studies curriculum for all of our elementary students. So our intended outcomes. So we want to really increase systemic continuity. So what do I mean by that? Really, again, just the clarity and the conditions. And how are we going to measure that? So through our partnership with the New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, they have these very strong rubrics. And so what we've done is we've assessed ourselves on that rubric. Where are we right now with regard to creating clarity in district conditions? And then what evidence do we have for where we are right now? And then where do we need to go over time? How are we going to get there? The strategies I spoke about. And then evaluate ourselves probably midway through the year, and then again at the end of the year to determine if we've grown on that particular curriculum in the areas of vision, leadership, and new measures and evaluation. We also want to, and this is a key part of the strategic plan, as you all know, really expand our definition of success. So when our students graduate, what do we mean by having a successful student who's going to go out there and thrive? What are those qualities? What are those characteristics? And our high schools will be working on that over the course of the year. So we can have an agreed upon definition of what an SRVUSD student really could be, should be, for lack of a better term, when they graduate from our high schools. And then we want to increase the capacity, again, specifically at our focal schools for deep learning. And again, there's another school-specific continuum that we're going to utilize there. We'll provide them with, again, examples of high-quality curriculum that they can use, implement, they can change it as they see fit according to their classroom and their students, but provide them with some supports as opposed to saying, good luck, go do it, here's what deep learning is. And then we also, there's a lot of innovation occurring across the district. And I think that we need to really highlight these existing innovations and examples of deep learning and really hold them up as exemplars and reward those individuals for really being creative. And then again, I've talked several times about assessments, really identify and pilot some assessments to see how we can kind of get a better understanding of where we are with regard to deep learning. And then our next steps. So implement these strategies, and we're always continually refining and evaluating and reflecting. Continue to regularly monitor progress towards goals. So again, we have our rubric. We don't want to wait for CASP and Healthy Kids data, that trailing data that comes in at June. We want to monitor our progress over time. We want to adjust strategies based on that data, based on that monitoring. And then, of course, continue to update all of you on our progress. So I think that's it.
And if I could just add special thanks to Debbie Pettish for taking the lead on this. This is the first time we've brought a strategic directions report to you. Kind of based upon your feedback and your insights and your questions, it will inform how we do this going forward. But I hope you're seeing some of the commitments we made regarding what are our starting places, what are our actions, the what and the why, and then what we plan to do so that when we come back to you a year from now, even though we'll provide updates along the way in different ways, but in terms of a formal fashion, we'll actually comment explicitly on the data we have captured and gathered to show our improvements in the areas that we've talked about. So Debbie, thank you for your leadership on this with many of the team who are here, because it's a full team effort, as you know, because of how important this area is to our students and our community.
Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, Debbie, thank you so much for your presentation. One question I have, though, during your presentation, in terms of talking about that initial stage of clarity, and, talking about getting, being able to focus on innovative programs, but at the same time also talking about structure, about doing things like you said in elementary literacy and social studies. And I'm just wondering how we move forward with a buy-in, particularly from individual teachers who are really going to count on to balance that innovation that they come up with the structure that would be imposed on them as the right thing to do, but move both of those things forward at the same time, but particularly getting buy-in to the concept of deep learning as we're beginning this process.
That's a great question. And so, one, we 100% trust our teachers, and we know that in their heart of hearts, as you do, that they want absolutely what's best for our students. We think that graduate profile or the exercise that the high schools are going to do, we're calling it a graduate profile, but where they have discussions about what an ideal graduate looks like is going to make a really big difference. Because I think sometimes, and I could speak for myself, when I was in the classroom, I was really focused on my particular subject area, biology or chemistry. But if you would have really asked me what I wanted to see in a graduate, it wasn't just knowledge of biology and chemistry. It had a lot to do with those global competencies, for example. I wanted my student to be able to communicate. I wanted them to be able to effectively collaborate. And I know we throw those words around a lot, but really dig deep and better understand how to do those things, because as we know, for the most part, that's what we will be doing in the workplace. So I think once we really sit down and think, what do we really want for our students? Social emotional well-being, we hear that from our teachers all the time. They care so much about our kids, and that's what they want. So how, once we see that versus maybe some of the things we're doing in the classroom, how do we kind of reconcile that? So I think that that will assist with the why.
Thank you.
I'm curious if we've met yet with the steering committee.
Tomorrow's our first meeting. Yeah.
What's the process going to look like in that meeting? Just how that's going to affect the plan as it is right now?
So really so I'm really excited about meeting with the steering committee because a lot of the people have not met. So the first one is tomorrow, and that's deep learning and innovation. And so essentially the steering committees are going to be monitoring, guiding, providing feedback on what we're doing over the course of the year. So the first meeting is really going to be kind of a lay of the land, because some people, students, parents, maybe many of our teachers are coming in and they don't necessarily know the what and the why. So we're going to dig into that. And then we really want to hear about their experiences, their thoughts. I mean, they were chosen for a reason, and we want to hear about what they think we need to do moving forward based on our strategies, our suggestions. What are their experiences and what do they think needs to happen?
Okay, great. And I just want to point out that I think that idea of looking at the definition of a graduate is a really great foundation for then building the how behind it. So
thank you.
So the rollout, you're going to pick some focal schools to start to roll out first. Is that?
Well, they're going to volunteer. You know, this year, as we all know, has been much more difficult than I anticipated in June or July. And so we really want the schools to volunteer. And so the principal would volunteer based on their capacity, based on their interest. And we would make sure that they have the buy-in of at least a subset of their teachers who want to really delve into the work. So it's on a volunteer basis.
So as we get further down the road and this is a district-wide strategic plan, do you foresee that continuing to be a volunteer thing?
No.
Or, and so will you go site by site and assess where they are and what they're doing already? And then, so it's not like a blanket thing, like here you go and this is what you're supposed to do. And so they'll be basically assessed for where they are and what they're providing already, and then complement that or add to it or change it or whatever.
Exactly, Trustee Clark. The way that we're seeing it is really these focal schools. So for this year, I heard an analogy of cannonballers versus toe dippers. So the focal schools are really going to be the cannonballers. They're going to jump all in and get wet and learn what works and maybe what doesn't work. Everyone's going to be a toe dipper, right, and learn about deep learning and innovation for this year. But as we go on, we will expand to all schools. No, I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I do know that it won't be a one size fits all, because we really need to be able to evaluate where I don't say we need to evaluate, the sites need to evaluate where they are on this continuum for deep learning, because we can't come in and say you're going to do this, 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 and this. They need to evaluate where they are, where they want to go, and how they're going to get there. And that's really a cycle of improvement, right? So I have a goal, some strategies I pick, I'm going to monitor those strategies over time, right? And adjust accordingly and evaluate if I'm making progress towards my goal.
So for your focal schools, are you hoping to have a cross section of elementary, middle, and high, or?
I am, yes, we are.
Okay.
And if I could just add, just like deep learning means that students own their learning, similarly, when we're talking about our staff being supported in this work, it's about creating the conditions for our staff to own their learning. And it is a shift because we've been asked by many of our staff to create these types of conditions as opposed to just making decisions from the district office and sharing them in a certain way. But we also know that some members of our community like that former style of where we kind of do it a more traditional way. So what we're going to be doing is, I love your image, just some will jump in right away, and that's going to teach us some things. Everybody's expected to be on the road. And then because we're working with evidence-based rubrics, which means there are definitions that are being used. This is not something we're just pulling out of the air, if you will. This allows staffs to self-assess. And I truly believe that will add to the ownership, because it's not about what we're saying from a district place we're seeing, but it's what our own staff is saying about their own practice together in that particular community with those particular students at that particular site.
I'm excited to hear more about, when the time comes, about the different assessments versus the traditional testing model that we've used. That is, going forward, that's going to be a huge shift, and I think very, very valuable to our students. And by the way, I love the video because it really did illustrate some things. It put into focus something that maybe I can't visualize on my own, even as well as this was a great presentation. That really was a great thing to be able to see.
Yeah, I wanted to build on that and just say that the video really helped to put things into perspective, because seeing the presentation and hearing the strategic directions pretty often, it's the same terms that are used over and over, but actually seeing what it would look like in a classroom environment really helped to put it into perspective of what exactly is going to be done. One thing, just another thing that I wanted to appreciate was the idea of shifting towards a more engaging style of just classroom instruction. I think there was a reference to just more traditional like testing system compared to a more activities-based system, and really making sure that the students are involved with more activities-based learning, I think is going to drive up the numbers on those charts of how many students are feeling connected to their school community.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ronit. That helped me. It's hard to argue with any of this. It all sounds great. It's at the root of it. I think it's about students being engaged in their learning, like our student board member just described. But Deb, can you help me understand how the rubrics and the concepts that you've described here relate to skill development, then skill application, and then skill transfer? Because I didn't hear any of those words come up. I think I know from our past discussions that that's all embedded in there, but I want people, and myself included, to understand that this isn't gimmicky. This isn't just a trick of how we engage kids, but it's really, how do we make sure all of our kids are learning the skills that they need to do to be a graduate of 12th grade and go on to college and or career and function in the global. So it's that, can you help me make that connection?
Sure. And yeah, and I just want to reiterate that those foundational skills, right? I mean, I have a 5-year-old in kindergarten. Those foundational skills are really, really imperative. And deep learning does not argue against those. But in fact, you can learn the foundational facts and knowledge while also building on those foundational facts and knowledge. Even deep learning in kindergarten, and I mean, you saw, I think that was 6th grade with the French lesson, but you can still support the students learning at deep levels in the lower grades while supporting them in acquiring the foundation that they need to go on. And with the rubrics are really more the adult learning, right? Okay. So they're more focused on district conditions, school conditions. So for example, to what extent are we creating an environment that really allows teachers to take risks that they want to follow some of their interests and pursuits based on what the students are really interested in, what their curiosities are. So no, the foundational academics are absolutely 100% still
It's
an
all part of a
important part.
continuum, and the end state is the deep learning where you're applying and then applying it to the competencies and utilizing the competencies and developing the competencies. Okay, I'm good. I just
And if I could
needed
just,
that word in there.
and if I could just add that we learned pretty significantly, and I'm going to mention it again, even though I've said it before, during the last year's different models, that when we were in that period of hybrid, which was difficult for us for a short period of time, we learned some lessons. So one way that I define deep learning really concretely is it's about lesson or instructional design. What I mean by that is, what are we asking kids to do? What are we asking them to know and understand? We have the California standards, we have the frameworks. We're going to be working together on those essential deep learning standards that have to align with our grading. But it's always about helping our students go deeper. And not just, even though knowledge is important and we will continue to expect growth in knowledge, but as you said, Trustee Hurd, so is analysis, so is application, so is the ability to communicate what is being learned and what might be those next steps. So it's all about the design to take it as deep as it can go, but allowing the students' interest to drive this as well. And that's where student voice comes in, because it's not that we all have to do the same learning task. You can still get at very deep learning while kids in a classroom might be doing 7 different things based upon what they are driven by, still with the framework, still with the standards, still with the assessment, but just some choice, for example, which we know enhances engagement. So it's trying to get at the whole notion of lesson environment, lesson design, assessment of that, which I do believe is very much on a foundation that's already here and only trying to go deeper.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. And I saw Sam with the video. I saw actually some of the skills, right? The actual life skills, right? Being, or critical skills being practiced. Also interdisciplinary, right? There were subjects, they were in a French course, but I saw a lot of computer science going on. Probably with computer science, there's some math going on in there, right? And they're working together. So there's, I'm already, with that video, seeing a lot of the, deep learning in a younger grade, right? Because when you think of deep learning, you might think high school, college, but we saw the 6th grade.
Yep.
So that was great. And I'm also interested, looking forward to, some of the assessments, right? Because it is some of these skills, because they are considered soft skills,
Right.
they're harder to measure. So looking forward to that discussion and seeing what we can develop there. But thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I think I do have a card, Helen of Doty Valley at front on 9.5.
I feel scared for this deep learning proposal, because I feel like it's dangling something in front of the students and trying to hypnotize them. That's how I feel. I would have loved for Miss Pettish to have elaborated on the characters that she had listed. I'm not sure what characters we're looking for these days. I see on TV these days our politicians are not really demonstrating the characters that I grew up as desirable. For example, the president just said to a group of young kids these days, just recently, that, as a president, part of what he needs to do is to avoid answering questions that the reporters would be asking him. I was in shock. I don't know what kind of characters we are, trying to produce in our students. I feel if you cannot identify what is desirable, how can you go deep and learn it? What if what you're trying to deep learn is something that is not constructive for the students when they go into the real world? For example, in the subjects area of health, ethnic studies, which is now required by our wonderful governor, who is more like an authoritarian. Otherwise you cannot graduate a high school, and as well as social studies. I can see problems with deep learning. For example, in health, they have a certain unit that touches on mental health. So the students will be introduced on suicide ideation, cluster suicides. On these subjects, how do you go deep learning, and how do you actually do activity that is assessment on agreed upon standards? Please explain that. I don't want my students to be exposed deep learning wise on suicide ideation and suicide cluster. I don't want my student to be exposed on ethnic studies required by the governor, who spent $1 billion on a Chinese electric car, BYD, purchasing masks, trying to teach my kids about ethnic studies, because I know that that will be anti-American. I don't want that to be deep learning. I need the district to be very specific on these quote unquote soft subjects. What are you looking for? If my student
Thank you, Helen. That's 3 minutes.
Okay, we come to 9.5, public comment for non-agenda items. And excuse me while I read this. My script here is getting a little longer and longer because I need to explain. We're making a change in our policy here with public comment. We want everyone to know that we value the input of the public, and we want to be sure that members of the public who wish to address the board have an opportunity to be heard. As a board, we also have an obligation to conduct the agendized business before us. In order to create balance, we have changed our process to accept comment for items not on the agenda. Beginning tonight, we will allow 30 minutes for public comment on non-agendized items at the beginning of the meeting when that item appears on the agenda, which is now. If we need more time, so if we can fulfill all our public comments in 30 minutes, we will. But if there are more public comments and we reach the 30 minutes for non-agendized items, we will pause the portion of the agenda and we'll resume it prior to hearing administrative reports. Additionally, we will hear from speakers on topics that only have one speaker card prior to hearing from speakers on topics with multiple cards on the same topic. And again, this only applies if the number of public comments run over 30 minutes. Okay, public comment will be limited to no longer than 3 minutes for each person, and the board cannot discuss any items not on the agenda for the meeting. The views expressed during public comment are those of the individual speaker and do not necessarily reflect the view of the board or district staff. The district believes in an inclusive, welcoming, and safe environment for its meetings for all of our community. The board respects each individual's rights to express ideas and opinions. Pursuant to applicable law and board policy, the board will not prohibit public criticism of the board or district. We kindly ask that when making public comment, you refrain from the use of profanity, exercise tolerance of others and their viewpoints, and exemplify model behavior. Please be mindful that district students may be watching. You are encouraged to address the board and the public in a respectful manner such that all those observing, from children to adults, are made to feel welcome, safe, and respected. The board will not permit any disturbance or willful disruption of board meeting. Persistent or excessive Disruption by any individual or group shall be grounds to terminate the privilege of addressing the board. Okay, now I have, sure, 9.6. Mike Arata.
I'll wait for a moment for those to distribute and suggest, Madam Chairman, that when people come to speak, that the topic on which they've spoken be added to the minutes. That would make the minutes more readable and helpful to people who take a look back at what has happened in previous meetings.
All right, thank you for that suggestion.
All set? Everybody have a copy? 2 copies, actually.
2 copies.
Yeah, 2 separate handouts. One 3 pages, the other, I think, 12.
Oh.
Yeah, they're coming from both directions. And thank you to the distributors. I'll get started. Last March, I recommended that you not adopt this book. It's entitled Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. And so despite my concerns that I expressed, and those are from the viewpoint of someone who taught and coached for 20 years professionally, you adopted the book anyway. In the time since, I've had an opportunity to review the book in greater detail. As a result, you've got this 12-page look at it now, and it discusses in greater detail the myriad problems that I discovered in looking through the book. More of them now. But presently, I want to focus on the 3-page handout. It refers to pages 211 and 212, which are included in that handout there in this book. Again, Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. The text is approved for use in 7th grade and now also in high schools. The author, Jason Reynolds, recommends several so-called gangsta rap performers as part of his text, and some specific songs from these gangsta rappers as drivers of what he calls change and empowerment. The gangsta rappers include NWA, which stands for Niggas with Attitudes. And the song that's chosen is Straight Outta Compton, recommended directly in this book for 7th graders in this case. The lyrics for it are on page 3 of that 3-page handout. Now, I'm certainly no expert on gangsta rap, but I cannot imagine lyrics more contemptibly vile or pornographically misogynistic than what's in this 4.5-minute abomination. You've heard about building character. This isn't how you do it. Board approved and taxpayer purchased text, you and your teachers are now shoveling this perverted filth in the face of kids as young as 11 or 12, advertised to them as a source of change and empowerment. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, when gangsta rap smut was being broadcast, a brave black lady, civil rights hero named Dolores Tucker, along with her National Political Congress of Black Women, opposed the garbage. And she said it was making Black people more violent, more materialistic, more sexually aggressive. But author Jason Reynolds, demonstrating just how twisted his outlook is, says that Mrs. Tucker's complaints represented a new racist level. The school district has had a long and shameful record, going back at least 4 decades, of pushing grossly inappropriate materials and lessons at kids in its charge. The school board should break the chain by rescinding its adoption of this book and withdrawing existing copies from classroom use. Hopefully, a public playing of the lyrics of this quote-unquote song will not be needed to accomplish that reversal. Please do the right thing.
Okay, and also we have another speaker on 9.6, Helen of Doherty Valley.
Hello, board. I want to speak on recent phenomenon that are associated with young people, specifically young YouTubers, who are transposing people's images onto videos. For example, it could be pornographic, It could be something, funny, and then they would sell them. I want to address that because as our students are getting more and more tech savvy, I feel we're lagging behind in terms of technology character building. When one is so smart and so competent, one is able to use one's intelligence, competence, and resources to hurt others, that is not okay. And I would like the board to address that in our curriculum. Specifically, if the students are in computer science classes or in technology classes, that our teachers please challenge our students to think about what they can do someday and what would they want or do not want other people to do to them if others can also use that technology to affect their lives. Specifically, I would recommend the teachers help students identify all apps or technology programs that can have facial recognition and transposing ability. And perhaps we shouldn't allow those kind of technology or apps in our campuses. But if we do allow it, what kind of character requirements should we instill in our children? For example, if somebody actually is showing a video deliberately, but the character is not that authentic character, it's a transposed character, perhaps they need to learn disclosure. What does disclosure mean? Then establish boundaries. What can and cannot be done in a school situation? Then what about consequences? So then there are no complaints later when something happened to a student that the student cannot say, oh, I did that out of ignorance. It is your fiduciary duty to protect our students and to educate. Thank you.
Okay, I think actually that was the last public comment for non-agenda items. So 9.7, Association President's Report. I don't see. There you go.
I guess that's me.
That's you, Laura.
You didn't leave me enough time to type up my notes. Thank you, guys. Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Laura Finco. I am the president of the San Ramon Valley Education Association, representing the over 1,700 non-managerial certificated personnel here in the district. I was just typing, well, first of all, I actually was in two places at the same time. We were doing our community think tank this evening for Servia. And so on my computer, on one half doing Zoom and on the other half watching the board meeting. It was really something. It was like, okay, split personality here, but it was very successful. So that was my tardiness coming in, but I actually was here present in the building. And so I got to watch the land acknowledgement of the Native American History Month. And that's what I was just typing here a little bit as I was thinking back to it. I really wanted to appreciate not only the acknowledgement, but also the expansiveness of the history of the ancestral lands of whose people we happen to be on this evening. I've said this before, Susanna, you and I have had this as a conversation. I wish that we would do this kind of land acknowledgement at every meeting, because it really does bode well for us to be able to recognize the Indigenous people whose land we are on and what that means for us and also for our students. As a district that has a very low duplicated population, student population, we know that the diversity, when we look even amongst our room, it's not very diverse. And so for us to always be able to recognize and acknowledge
and understand our cultures, our ethnicities, our communities, our religions, and have that appreciation and go deeper into it and not be afraid of it and be able to be bold and have courageous conversations. I think the more that we do this, the more common it is, the more accepting it is, the less scary it is. I know the first time I stood here at a board meeting and I said my pronouns. Hi, my name is Laura Finco. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. There was a public comment immediately afterwards in shock and condemnation that I would be so bold to say my pronouns. And there was almost that little tidbit of that people should be scared of me because I am an openly gay educator, and that maybe I have a hidden agenda because I'm saying my pronouns, and I'm encouraging, and that we here in this district encourage that kind of identification. But yet I stood every single meeting since then, proudly saying my pronouns. And it's less scary and it's more accepting. And I have yet to hear, once again, anyone make a public comment against me in addressing what my pronouns are, because that's an important part of me. And I think as we maybe adopt doing something like the land acknowledgement on a more common, on a more, what is the word I'm thinking? Every meeting basis, it's going to be less scary for us, those conversations about who we are and what it means to have these kinds of cultural diversities in our school system. And also recognize that, as one of my members said to me at one time, we have to do better. We have to do better when it comes to increasing the diversity and acknowledging the diversity and pulling in the diversity into our schools so that everyone truly does feel welcome and that our students begin to see more of themselves in the very people who we entrust with their education. And so that really wasn't the message that I was planning on talking about tonight. It just sort of came out of the earlier presentation. What I was really wanting to just quickly say is just give you a quick update. With survey, as many of you know, we've been in negotiations, and I'm hopeful that negotiations have actually gone pretty well over the last few times. We want to always remember that in our negotiations, we really are taking a student-centered approach, knowing that everything that we're able to do for our kids, whether it's talking about compensation, whether it's talking about hours of employment, whether it's talking about the school calendar or even evaluations, that it has to be done with our students in mind. And it's really been a positive experience to actually see that in our negotiations and having that really be the main central piece of our conversations as we're dealing with what can otherwise be difficult conversations. So again, on behalf of those that I represent, we want to thank our management partners for having these conversations with us. And I know that we have one more negotiation session scheduled for this week. And then hopefully we won't have to have another one. Just saying. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Laura. Okay. 9.8 student board members report. Run it.
Thank you. So since our last meeting, we've had a couple of strides in the spheres of child nutrition, but there's also been activities just in the spheres of, once again, child nutrition, but also equity, learning management systems, and just the general in-person school environment, especially as we are starting to get in towards just with the end of the first quarter a couple of weeks ago, and starting to hit our stride with being back in in-person school in comparison to last year. So since our last meeting, we've been able to add publicly available menus at all school sites so that students are aware of what food is being served prior to coming to school. That will allow them to make an informed decision on whether or not to bring lunch from home on a given day, And this is something that we were talking about at the beginning of the school year. It was a bit of a trouble that we had with child nutrition at the start, but after discussions with the directors and working with the Student Senate, we've been able to get that established across all of the school sites. There should also be information on the district website, I believe, with the menus on a weekly or monthly basis. Apart from that, there have been increasing amounts of food wastage and littering on campus, and people do want to see some changes in the menu, as we've discussed at past meetings. So processes involving both of these initiatives are in progress, and we may invite Zeta Riker from the Child Nutrition Department for our next Student Senate meeting in order to collaborate with the students from various different school sites across the middle and high school level in order to understand exactly what can be done to take some steps in the right direction involving the issues of food wastage and menu choices. Part of the food wastage, we do believe, is the way the food is packaged, and the Student Senate will be working to see if there are any workarounds under the permissible current policies, because we do want to keep those just centerpiece for everything that we are doing. Apart from that, there have been racist incidents at various schools at the middle and high school level, and the Student Senate has begun working on anti-bullying initiatives. Tomorrow, I will be meeting with the Monte Vista affinity groups. In our Student Senate, we do have Student Senate umbrella chairs who lead up certain initiatives involving topics like mental health, equity, social emotional well-being, which also comes under one of those umbrellas, in-person schools, and releasing our newsletters. So some of the umbrella leaders and the members of those committees will be meeting with affinity groups at their schools, and we hope to gather some input from various schools across the district to understand what can be done in order to prevent such incidents, because it will really take a sort of brainstorming exercise in order to understand the root cause of all of these issues, where it's really coming from, and then what can be done to combat all of these issues. But in the meantime, after discussions with my school principal and various students across the district, we do have a just resounding belief that it's important to celebrate the diversity and accomplishments of our student body. And we will begin to roll out a plan just to make sure that people are being celebrated for who they are and what they're doing within the community, just in order to just diversify the narrative and sort of shift the narrative in a direction which is really reinforcing the strength and positivity within our community rather than tearing other people down. Finally, I have been talking with some members of the Student Senate and Mr. Campopiano to host some virtual office hours for students to where they can just come in via Zoom link and discuss the issues that they're seeing within their school community. This will be a way for me to gather some student input and gauge broader opinions of the vast district population that we have. We understand that not everybody can be a part of the Student Senate, not everybody can come out to a board meeting, and not everybody has the traditional means of being able to voice their opinion. So I really want to make sure that everybody can sort of find time during that section to come in, or they can send me an email at the student board member at SRVUSD.net email. And I also hope to create some sort of form submission method just in place of that virtual office hours if somebody is ever not able to come in, because we do want to understand what's going on at all of the school sites and really get just a comprehensive view of what's going on with the entirety of the student body, not just the high schools and not just the middle schools. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ronette, and thank you so much for actually working with the Student Senate and the different schools on the incidences, the racist incidences, because I think that that can't right now, right? If there's an incident to happen, and then of course our administration and the school staff, try and work on that. But I think that along with student help, right, that will, I think, a long way to helping, like you said, trying to determine what the, root cause, why certain things are happening besides just, is it certain anger, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, thank you for taking that up. And Helen.
Hi, Mr. Batra. Thank you for your report. As a parent, I have a few comments and questions for you. First of all, I reside in San Ramon, and I noticed that our teen councils are appointed. So therefore, I'm not sure if they really represent students or the adults who appoint them. But I hope that you two are also appointed, that you can be as unbiased as possible. So therefore, I would like to challenge what you just said about that, there were racist incidents, because I know that this is a political issue. I am afraid that there are certain adults who may be manufacturing these issues on campus, and therefore you are appointed to sort of channel that political movement in our school district. So just to give you the benefit of the doubt, I would like to know if you could please share, without disclosing names or specific sites, what were the nature of those incidents, so we know these are legitimate and not manufactured.
Yeah, Helen, I don't think that's appropriate.
Secondly, I would like to know if the bathroom situation in one of our school sites has been improved. And lastly, were you able to follow up with the Charlottewood elementary school students who were distressfully released one time, if they have been consulted or consoled, and if they are, now happily in our school district? Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. We'll have a staff member reach out to you to answer those questions.
Okay, 10.0. Thank you again, Ronette. Action items. So 10.1, consideration of approval of revision to board policy and administrative regulations 1312.3, 4030, and 4119.11. Assistant Superintendent Roczynski.
Thank you, President Ordway. So as the board will recall, on October 5th, we brought forward as a first read and as an informational items, board policies and administrative regulations on uniform complaint procedures, non-discrimination in employment, and sexual harassment. All of those policies were and are being brought forward to you as necessary policy revisions to make sure that our both policies and administrative regulations accurately reflect all statutes and regulations. One thing that the trustees asked we do last time was to make sure that items number 3 and 4 in administrative regulation 1312.3 in the section under notifications be transposed. That should have been done. It was done between last meeting and tonight. So we bring this forward to you tonight with a request that you approve as presented. Thank you.
Great. Any questions?
Just one question to Mr. Roczynski. Was that the only change made since reviewed it last meeting?
Yes, sir. It should have been.
Very good. Thank you. In that case, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 10.1.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now going to 10.2, which originally is 12.3, consideration of approval of contract purchases over $50,000. I think, Helen, you pulled it, yeah?
Okay, so I pulled this item because I noticed that there were two itemized spending, one $80,000 for 75 air scrubbers. So that translates to $1,067 each. And then it says it's a COVID grant. And then there's one that was $350,000 for contact tracing. And then next to it too, it says COVID grant. So I don't understand, if there is COVID grant to cover this, then why is it that it becomes a spending approval for purchase? Please, if you can clarify that for this item, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, Assistant Superintendent Hillman.
So these two items, the air scrubbers, are essentially advanced air cleaners. You've seen HEPA filters or portable air cleaners that are more, I would say, maybe residential friendly. You've seen them maybe around the districts in our STC classes. These are more maintenance friendly, I would say. They're larger. They push a different, a higher amount of air. They also, you can seen them in other situations where you can actually attach ducting to it, so you can create negative air pressure. It can be used for COVID air filtering. It can also be used for if there's a concern of mold or air particulate, other uses as well. The second item on this is the Public Health Institute for contact tracing through the end of the school year. As I think the board is aware, we've been using retired administrators to help our school sites with contact tracing, sending out the letters, exposures, telling them about testing, families, et cetera. And what we would like to do is, we're very well aware that there's a staffing shortage. We'd like to be able to repurpose our administrative retirees to other things. So the Public Health Institute is offering their services to school districts up and down the state. And so this contract would be to hire through the end of the school year 4 full-time contact tracers from the Public Health Institute to take over that work to free up our retirees. The funding sources, the state of California has given school districts up and down the state one-time COVID dollars in the forms of several different grants. And they're titled different things: ESSER $1, ESSER $2, $8. But all told, the district has received about $47 million in one funding for us to use. And you've seen before that we've committed some of these funds to various things over the past 18 months: purchasing PPE, purchasing HEPA, portable filters, things like this. And then also staffing, paying for some staffing as well. So what this document is, all it's trying to show is there's a purchase dollar amount for these contracts. They're over the amount of $50,000, which is a local rule that we have set in place that you want to see these things. We're bringing it forward to you, and we're showing you how we plan to pay for it. These are not general fund expenses. They are coming from the one-time dollars we received from the state for purposes just like this.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thanks. And then the next item is 10.3, which was 12.8, consideration of award of bid number 855 produce.
Okay, so for this item, when I read the document, it sounded like there were other bidders. However, the other bidders were not listed, and the only 2 companies that are listed for approval are recommended to be approved both together. It just didn't sound right. So I am wondering if there could be some elaboration on how many bidders altogether, because they were chosen for the lowest bid, I believe. Then at least this document will become more credible. Thank you.
So I'm asking our behind the scenes, our child nutrition director, to how many bidders we had. I wasn't aware of how many we had. The 2 that are on here, just for a little bit additional information, are providing produce, apples, cucumbers, tomatoes, snap peas in single serving packages that come pre-done so that they're easy to distribute. There was 2 companies that bid. The low bid is getting it. So for clarification, this is saying that both of them are being jointly selected. That's what it says. And that there were 2 bidders. There were only 2 bidders.
So maybe certain items from one and certain items
I
from the
believe
other.
that's the case.
Low
yes.
bidder on whatever the menu options were.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. All right. Motion?
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
I second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Clark. Call out vote, Student Board Member Bacha,
Aye.
Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Bratt,
Aye.
Board Member Hurd,
Aye.
Board Member Mintz,
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Q. And then next is 10.4, with 12.14, and the adoption of textbook. And I have a couple of different, okay. Well, we'll go ahead and go with Helen, since she pulled, this is one of the ones that you pulled, right?
No,
Oh,
she didn't.
sorry, no. Okay, Susan, sorry.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Susan Lancaster. I have my two sons graduated from San Ramon Valley High a while back. I would like to discuss the book. This is Anti-Racist. This is the book. Many of you, I hope, have looked at it. I saw it on the agenda yesterday, so I went on Amazon to look for reviews. There are many 5-star reviews, but I also read the critical 1- and 2-star reviews to inform myself to see if there's a pattern or of similar criticisms. I was able to purchase it today and reviewed some of it myself, but I'd rather read a few of the 1- and 2-star reviews. So one of them is February of this year. At first glance, its artwork is colorful and very bright. However, the good qualities about it stops there, as the artwork is quite honestly the best part of the entire thing. Rather than actually addressing the issue of racism as what it is, a human issue, the narrative clearly defines a dividing line of Black versus white and ensures that you know that Black is good and white is bad. Ultimately, it's little more than sophistry, rhetoric, hatred, and racism attempting to be disguised as empowerment. Rather than being an anti-racist installment, as the title states, this book actually further perpetuates the idea that we are different because of our skin color, rather than promoting the idea that we are similar because we're human. Another one. August of last year. Remember MLK? I do. His speech about judging people by their character rather than by the color of their skin has always been an inspiration to me. Those days now gone. Today's Marxist activists, like the authors of this book, feel that race is the most important factor in life. The capitalization of Black, brown, Asian throughout the book, while whites get the lowercase spelling, is horrifying. And let me say that I know racism is real and I need to be needs to be discussed. This is another one of her issues. This is not a review, but it was taken from a review and I looked at it myself. She defines a dominant culture and she puts everybody in it, in this dominant culture box: whites, males, cisgenders, Christians, etc. These are groups that have power. Then all others, people of color, all others, many others that have out of the ordinary, out of the normal, out of the majority dominant box are, she calls, subordinates. Now, I have a problem with that word and the idea that we're going to be teaching our students that they are subordinates, people, students of color, students that are out of the whatever they call it, neurotypical. My son is one of those. I don't want them to be labeled and put in a group that says they are subordinates.
Thank you, Susan. That's 3 minutes.
I'm asking you to reconsider this as critical race theory, and I'd like you to reconsider approving this book.
Now, I also have Mike Arata on the same item.
And you've received copies by email as for this, as well as what I spoke about previously. Okay. One of the three books that you'll adopt this evening, regardless of what anybody says about it, is this book is anti-racist, and it looks like this. So you've got a picture of it there on the cover of the handout. By the way, this book spells folks with people who are the folks at home, spells it with an X instead of a KS. Because, says the author, Tiffany Jewell, folks spelled with an X is a gender neutral term created by activist communities. That was easy to guess. Who knew that the term folks with a KS was somehow gender related? And at least we know where the book's internal contradictions and general silliness originate. It's from the self-proclaimed anti-racist Tiffany Jewell and her activist communities. And the title, This Book is Anti-Racist? No, it's not. The book is in fact strikingly racist itself, as you've just heard from Susan. Referring again to its author's note, first paragraph, it says, we'll capitalize, as Susan said, Black, Brown, Indigenous, people of color, and folks, again with an X instead of a KS, folks of the global majority. If you listen carefully, you will have noticed that the term white is not among those, because white, as Susan said, is low class, or they are made low class, lowercase throughout the book. And so as the book proceeds, you have sentences like, Richard Loving was white, no caps, and Mildred Loving was Black, Indigenous, biracial, with caps. Then there's this gem. Being racist against white people is not a thing. So I can have prejudice against white people. In our society, reverse racism is not real. As with other racialist books being adopted by the school district and school board, there's no balance in this one either. There's no inspirational rags to riches accounts of Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, Thomas Sowell, General Colin Powell. They aren't there. There's no balance. Jewell, the author, goes back and forth herself between calling race just a social construct and calling it part of our lives, back and forth between those two opinions. Something that's important to see and acknowledge, but just a social construct. It's clear throughout that Jewell is obsessed with race, self-pity, and bitter disdain for whites. Her actually racist, supposedly anti-racist book reads like a parody of opportunistic race hustlers who enrich themselves by perpetuating a never-ending narrative of white supremacist oppressors supposedly making victims of everyone else. Jewell wants essentially to substitute a new racism for the old racism. This book is racist, anti-racist. Which is it? It's actually quite racist. You should reject it and not adopt it this evening. Thank you.
And we have one more card, Helen.
So I want to thank my two predecessors for taking their time and using their money to buy this book, because I don't think I would have done that, but they did. I want to thank them, and for coming all the way out here and to educate us what these books are really about. Oftentimes, I suspect that you guys just read the reports. You don't even have the textbooks at hand. So I am a yellow person, and my student will treat people according to their characters and themselves as individuals, not as colored groups. So I firmly oppose that you would actually condition my child to see people according to their color and then put them in groups without even attempting to get to know them. That is not education. That is brainwashing. And that is very scary oppression, mental oppression. If you're going to go deep learning, please do not go deep learning on racism, especially when you are teaching students to hate each other. We do not need that. I'm standing here as a product of this country, of what racial harmony is. We do have differences. However, I am a living proof that this country really doesn't have racism, or I would not be able to be in this school district predominantly 15, 20 years ago were white people. My very house, my community were planned and built by white people. My streets and all the environment that I now enjoy were established by white people. To the Black people who have helped me in the past, I'm also very grateful, and I remember them. When I lived in New York City, it was a Black gentleman who, they don't have any elevators in New York City, so he came to me, he said, "May I help you?" He picked up my child inside the stroller. He was a strong, very tall gentleman, and carried the stroller up the subway station from the bottom to the top for me. I am forever grateful to every single individual that comes into my life that deserves my respect. Whether you are Black, white, yellow, brown, gay, straight, Christian, Muslim, atheist, I do not care. All I care about is, are you respectable in terms of your character, and are you truly, honestly human natured? To
Thank you,
brainwash.
Helen. That's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I understand it, this book that are adopting tonight, it's for grades 11 through 12, and this is not. This if Director Depetish can kind of help me understand, because I think that this is not the only.
Thank you, President. Actually invite our Executive Director of Curriculum to come up and answer and respond.
Sure. Hello again. So this book is Anti-Racist, was written by Tiffany Jewell, and it was put forth for approval by one of our ethnic studies teachers for use in his class at Doherty Valley High School. With that being said, once a book is approved at a certain level for a certain class, that means that any teacher at that level could use this text. So that means that any high school teacher, for example, could use it. Not middle or elementary, but any high school. So one individual puts it forward. It goes through a vetting process. It obviously comes here as part of that vetting process. And then it goes on an approved list for high school.
Right. And then how would they use this textbook? This is not like we traditionally, I remember when I was young, right? We have one social studies textbook and that's all you use. And is that the same way we're using this book, or other way?
No, that's a great question, Susanna. So no, that's not the way that this particular teacher would use this text. And so first of all, a really important part of the Common Core ELA standards is this idea that, anything you read, you are going to evaluate the sources, that you are not reading it and considering it the truth, including a textbook from a publishing company, right? And so you're always evaluating resources, especially in ELA classes, an extremely important part of our standards. Plus, the ethnic studies classes have a plethora of resources to use, lots of articles. It's mainly a discussion-based class, so they're pulling in lots of different resources from different areas. And I will tell you that on Common Sense Media, they do give it, I believe it was 5 stars, and said that it was appropriate for ages 12 and above. It is something that, is part of our documentation with regard to how we review these materials. They were vetted. So what happened essentially is a teacher finds the book, reads the book, says that they want to use it for their particular class. They have to go to fellow department members in order to get their input on whether or not the text is appropriate. They also have to get those members to sign off on it, as well as a administrator at that particular site, which is what happened for this book. Then it comes to the Ed Services Department, and typically one of us, depending on the content, depending on our time limits, reviews the book. It might be me, It might be Hong Yuan, who's our equity director. It might be Deanna Zapia as our ELA coordinator, before bringing it forward to you. So we brought it forward to you because we did feel that it was, we trust the teacher, that he feels it's appropriate for his class. We reviewed it on Common Sense Media, and it was approved for students 12 and older.
Okay. And again, going back to how to use the book, right? The teachers, again, they use a lot of different, like you said, articles and other books of different perspective, including the white experience as well as other ethnicities.
This is just one of many, many, many resources. It's a new class, and so they're really exploring new resources to bring in this particular school year. So there's many different resources they've been exploring.
Okay. And again, they just as even as our speakers and other people online, either Amazon or different groups that have different, different reviews of the books. Some liked it, right? Some don't.
Sure.
Argue, and so that's really critical thinking. It's like really given your putting up for discussion, right?
So thank you for saying that, Trustee Ordway. I have observed the ethnic studies classes, and what I found is they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. They're not telling kids how to think. They're really building, we spoke earlier about critical thinking skills, and that's exactly what's happening. They're reading a text, they're reading an article, they're watching a video, and then the teacher is facilitating a discussion so that the students can make their own sense of that video.
And the students can kind of push back and say,
they
I
did,
don't.
And they did. And
yeah,
they did.
I don't agree with this, right?
They did in at least one class that I observed, and that was the teacher's job to facilitate that conversation and not to say you're right, you're wrong.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think that you had your comment. Thank you, Mr. Rada. Okay, so can I have a motion? No, I'm sorry. Again, 3 minutes. We have to move on.
You are, by voting on this, you are teaching critical race theory in your schools. Just to be clear, this is a national question.
Yeah, so can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Bratt and seconded by Board Member Clark. Call out vote. Student Board Member Bacha?
Aye.
Board Member Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd?
Aye.
Board Member Mintz?
Aye.
Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great. Moving on to 10.5, which was 12.15, consideration of approval of the audit of the state preschool program for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
So for this item, I read the report, and it says that this program is only for eligible children. So then in that case, the report should really respond to the board members in updating you on how they plan to disseminate information regarding this opportunity, because this is a preschool program. So these families may not necessarily already in our system. So I wonder how you're going to identify them. Most likely, if they are eligible for this program, they are not reachable by social media, because usually in order to be reachable by social media, you have to have technology, and technology are costly. And if they can afford costly technology, then they won't need this program. So I want to challenge you to think about, how do you plan to reach these people so that you don't have imposters of whoever, is going to basically steal this money, and then therefore prevent other people who really need this money to be able to use it. And I really wish that you would have answered at least, the opposing material you would be presenting to challenge the critical thinking. Otherwise, it's brainwashing. Thank you.
Yeah, Assistant Superintendent Gerardo about the preschool program.
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to invite our executive director, Nadine Rosenzweig,
Okay.
who oversees our preschool program and that process that we vet families through.
Thank you.
Good evening. So these are the two county preschool programs, state-funded preschool programs that we have housed at Live Oak Elementary and Walt Disney Elementary. We do reach out. We attend the county and state preschool meetings, and we do reach out to a variety of ways. Social media would be one way that we reach out to our parents, but we have increased. This is the 5th year of the program, and parents do apply. And Kathy McSweeney, our administrative assistant, and I look through the applications. It's a very rigorous application process, and we go through and eligible students. We don't just take students that are in San Ramon district. We can take students in neighboring districts. So it's a county-wide program that parents do apply for. Last year in the pandemic, we needed to cap our registration numbers due to the pandemic. We have increased it this year because we are back in person. So I hope that answers the question. And the audit are the things that we are purchasing with the funding that we get to make sure that it matches. And then it's the business department reaches out and matches all that. And we're asking for that to go forward so that we can meet our deadline with the county and state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nadine. Can I ask for, yeah.
I move
motion.
approval to accept the recommendation to accept the audit.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batcha.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great. Okay, so we're moving on to administrative matters. Board member reports.
Yeah. 11.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I had to flip to find the 12 points, so I'm already at 12. Okay. Yes, back to 11.0, information item on first reading of revisions to board policy and administrative regulations 5145.3 and 5145.7.
Thank you again, President Way. So this is, again, just an informational item. It's intended this evening to be a first read. These are the last two board policies and administrative regulations that we're bringing forward that were the revisions of which were determined necessary when we first took a look at the Title IX policy that we brought to you, I believe, back in June. So there's currently Board Policy 5145.3 on non-discrimination, harassment, and anti-bullying. There is no accompanying AR, so that would be a new AR. And we also have revisions to existing board policies and administrative regulations. 145.7 on sexual harassment. Both of these are in the 5,000 series, so they're actually specifically applicable to students.
Thank you. And that's not an action, right? That's information. Thank you for that.
A question for
yes.
Keith, if that's okay. Keith, so do these fall in line with CSBA policies, and how does the ARs fit in terms of, do we get anything from CSBA in terms of ARs, or is those just internally developed?
No, absolutely. So we get templates for both board policies and administrative regulations through CSBA, and these are all aligned and based upon CSBA templates.
Okay. Is there anything in here specific to ours based upon our review, or is it basically pretty much just in alignment?
It is in alignment with statute and regulations.
Okay. Thank you.
Keith, I had one little edity kind of thing. It's on page 94 of the packet.
Could you please cite which board policy or administrative regulation we're looking at?
Scrolling to get to.
Pardon me?
I'll have to
Yeah, it's
scroll
full.
Okay.
to where we are in.
That's a big packet.
This is the hard part of having it all in PDF like this. Measures to discrimination. Okay, so it is in AR 5145.3.
Okay.
Several pages into that though. Let's see, 94. It's under the heading of transgender and gender nonconforming students. It's
Okay.
where it's defining terms.
Mhm.
So the second to last paragraph defines gender expression. It looks like it just or not got missed. There's whether stereotypically
I see.
associated.
I see that.
So I think there was similar wording up above, and I think it was just missed.
So it's gender expression means the student's gender-related appearance and behavior, whether or not stereotypically associated with the student's assigned sex at birth.
Exactly.
Thank you.
The other quick question I have, Keith, when we were going over the Title IX information, is it duplicated in here, or how does that fit in with other policies and ARs?
The various policies and ARs are intended to align with each other.
Okay.
So when you take them in totality, and we kind of developed them and made revisions to them alongside of council, they're intended to pretty well align with, and in some cases even cross-reference each other.
Okay, and that's the part that I was wondering about, was the cross-reference, because
Yeah.
I'm seeing things about the compliance officer and Title IX, that type of thing in here, which we've covered other places as well.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else? Nope. Okay, I do have a card, Helen, on 11.1.
Mr. Rojenski, because you said that this will apply to students, I'm wondering, how will you disseminate these pages, these packets of pages to students? And in what class will they be informed of these rules that they're supposed to comply? And how will this be enforced? In other words, if someone reports me for unwelcomed, whatever, sexual advances or whatever, what is the protocol? First, do they even talk to me and let me know I'm actually doing something offensive? Or will they go straight to the police? Or, I mean, what is the consequence? And then secondly, or the next question would be, then how will the parents be notified? Will the students be immediately pulled into the principal's office, and be given a pullout or whatever you call that, suspension? And then, it's all very confusing if you're going to apply this to students. And I believe more clarifications are required for students as well as parents. And at this time, I don't see you doing that. So please clarify and elaborate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, the policies require that all of the policies be publicly available and included on the district's website. So as is true of all other board policies and administrative regulations, they will be updated and readily available at any time for any member of the public or any student to see. We also have documentation that we provide to students at each school site in terms of family handbooks and those types of things, where these policies will be incorporated. Dissemination will be made available to students and families in that matter, excuse me. In the event that complaints are brought forward, both myself, if it's brought forward as a uniform complaint, I would be basically processing the processing and investigation and the resolution. If some type of a complaint is brought forward as a uniform complaint, if it's brought forward as a Title IX complaint, it would be processed through our Director of Student Services, Mr. Dave Kravitz. And
This is an informational item this evening, not an action item.
okay, thank you.
So we're moving on to, correct me if I'm wrong, but finally to the board reports. So yes, I run it. Did you have any additional report?
Over, I believe, the next week, I will be going to the local planning and accountability plan meeting, the LCAP. Other routine student senate stuff will be going on in the meantime, but I think I covered most of the important details in the prior report.
Great, thanks. Shelley?
So last week I visited Twin Creeks Elementary and did a preview of the construction and met some of the staff and had the pleasure of being given a tour by their amazing principal, Shelley Kravitz, and I don't forget her name because she's a Shelley too. She's amazing. She's a ray of sunshine and so positive. So that was a great visit, and the construction is getting on well now after we had a few bumps in the road. I think some of the places that I went in the last month or so, many of my colleagues on the board have been there also. I attended the Contra Costa County School Board Association Zoom presentation on special education, which was given by Marianne Freitas, who was our director of special education here, and she outlined some of the challenges ahead in special ed. I also attended the California Association of Suburban School Districts virtual meeting on legislators' priorities for the 2022 session, and the hot topics that came out of that really concern our school district and many others like us are increase in base funding, declining enrollment, and staff shortages, among others. So this organization helps to bring that to light to our legislators. Also attended the Asian Pacific Islander School Board Members Association virtual meeting on navigating the political landscape of ethnic studies, and attended the Discovery Center 50th anniversary benefit at the Village Theater, which was a great event and fun. And it's an outstanding organization that provides mental health services to the Tri-Valley and to our students and staff. So we're grateful to them. That was their 50th anniversary. And the mayor has asked me to extend an invitation to all board members and staff to attend the Veterans Day celebration at the Veterans Memorial Building on November 11th at 11 a.m. The town will be recognized as a National Purple Heart recipient member. So if anybody can make that, I'm planning on being there. And I'm looking forward to visits at Sycamore and Monterey this week, as well as our town liaison meeting in a couple days. So that's it for me.
Thanks. Last week, I attended the SELPA CAC meeting, and then attended a very powerful domestic violence vigil at the San Ramon City Hall, and the San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition meeting, which I believe was last night. Ken was there, and the presentations were on the Afghan refugees and how to help them in our community, and supporting LGBTQ+ youth. And then I just wanted to take a second to thank everyone who volunteered and participated in the Run for Education. That's a very important thing for our community, and I'm grateful for everyone that was a part of it. So thank you.
In addition to Shelley, as well as Laura and Ken and Susanna, we were all there at the California Association of Suburban School Districts. This is the first year that we've actually been members of that organization. I'd like to thank Dr. Malloy for bringing us there and kind of showing us, how to attend. I think that's a really worthwhile association for us to participate in. I also attended the Special Ed CAC, and I just want to say that I think that group has kind of a little more vibrant than normal. A lot of attendance, a lot of participation, really great reports from our PTA exceptional education chair, and she's bringing issues forward, and that's really an appropriate role for her there. So I wanted to give a little shout out. I had the pleasure of distributing dictionaries with Rotary last week. Ken was with me as well as, I think he did more than I did, but we got to go to Coyote Creek on Friday. It was so great to be in a classroom again and walk these kids how to use their dictionary and taught them about guide words. And the staff was so, just welcoming and appreciating that we were there. And it was just really, really neat to do that again after not being able to do it for a year. And then last night, I actually helped facilitate a dyslexia simulation, and we had over 150 people sign up for this virtual event. Not all attended, but I just wanted to recognize that a lot of our teaching staff was there, and they were there with open minds and eager to learn. There was lots of communication in the chat about that this would be a great activity for staff meetings. So I just wanted to thank those staff for attending and put the offer out there that we're happy to do that for any staffs that would like to have that simulation.
As mentioned, a number of us attended, all of us attended the Suburban Schools Association meeting. And I think the only reason I bring it up as well is how important it is for us as a school district, as a board administration, to get involved in advocacy at the state level, given that the state has such a strong hold on our financial situation. And as a suburban school district, particularly one that's not in basic aid, we're really at the constrained by the state and the types of ways that the state handles its finances for education. So for us to get more involved in this organization as well as through other ways is really important for our community to make sure that we're able to achieve the kind of success we need in terms of funding from the state as well as other funding sources. As Rachel mentioned, dictionary distribution. I was at Coyote Creek with her as well earlier in the week at Bella Vista, and really enjoyed being able to hand a dictionary to third graders and say, hey, this is yours to keep. In an age of social media and everything being online, to be able to tangibly hold a book, a reference book that's going to help them, particularly as third graders, as they move from learning to read to reading to learn. So that's one of my more enjoyable activities each year. Coming up, I've got some meetings with the Facilities Oversight Committee, as well as a Danville liaison meeting coming up this week.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat because I saw you all virtually. It was great seeing you all this last week at the various different meetings. So I'll just actually add we've got some great educators, teachers in our school district. We heard, right? Teacher of the Year, the county Teacher of the Year, Michelle Wilson earlier, recognized her. And I'd like to also give a shout out to Cheryl Keller, teacher at Iron Horse Middle School, who is now named Educator of the Year by the San Ramon Chamber of Commerce. So that I think they're going to recognize her at a actually in-person event this year. So it's kind of a shout out. That's it for me.
Thank you, President Ordway. I'll just add a few thoughts. First of all, to our staff, I know we've been talking about that this evening, and I'm also conscious of the fact that even though when we all visit campuses, we're seeing great things. We're seeing wonderful energy. We're students learning. We're seeing our staff engaged. But I'm also wanting to comment that the reason our gratitude is so important, and sometimes that gratitude wears thin, is because there are still challenges that we're working through, and there are still some staffing shortages that we're facing. And though I promise you we're working as hard as we can on all of these things, I'm conscious of the fact that having been in the world of education for over 30 years, we're a little more tired than we usually would be in October. And I say that not to complain. I say that because I think we just need to acknowledge that while we are continuing to do, I think, really amazing work, we've also at the cabinet level been working closely with our principals, working with our union colleagues,
working with our staff to say, okay, what can we do to be supportive? How can we bring the temperature down, if I can use that term? And what concrete strategies can we employ? I share that with you because I don't have the answer to those questions yet, but I wanted you to know that we're actively engaging in that discussion, and we are probably going to need to slow some things down. Doesn't mean we're stopping them. It's just that the expectations are high, and they should be. But I also think we need to manage kind of people's abilities to do as many things in this environment as are required. I'll give you an example. Anytime a student is needing to be quarantined, there are very specific requests and expectations that our staff needs to engage in. And though we're doing, I think, a really great job there, it's just another piece, and I use that as an example. When we're fulfilling requirements that our state has shared with us about independent study, again, it is a very time-consuming process that involves our staff. No complaints, just wanting to make you aware that that is something that we are just watching, and we will keep you closely informed about that. Really excited about all of our steering committees aligned with the strategic directions starting this week. So all 4 meetings will happen over the next 2 weeks. Again, just to reiterate, it's all a part of how we engage widely, gather all the information required to focus our efforts, ensure that staff's work is informed by what we learn, and then when we bring things to you, and of course you're participating as well, but when we bring things to you more formally here for your oversight and for your engagement, it will be information, it will be actions, it'll be strategies that have been formed by this process. And so I'm quite excited about that. Testing. It's going well. We have been employing the rapid testing to schools when there is a close contact. And I think that we've learned quite a bit in this process. The one piece I want to flag, though we're still waiting for information, is there is a possibility that the CARES Act dollars that have not just supported us, but have supported everyone in relationship to testing in schools may come to an end. And the reason I'm flagging it is that if it does, then the whole concept of insurance companies being paid for by other means may start to be a question. We're waiting to hear more about this, but not to fear. The state looks like they are ready to step in. We've been talking about that. So even though we have talked previously that we would engage the state in a more surveillance testing way, our vaccination rates are now at 84% in the entire county and much higher here. So we don't believe that the limited resources will be used for surveillance testing, because we think we may need to use this resource for the close contact tracing, because if the insurance dollars aren't going to cover testing and the CARES Act dollars are no longer here, we would need to rely on this resource so people are not expected to pay for their testing, which we are not suggesting should ever happen. So I'm alerting you to that because we don't have the information yet. We're following it closely, but sometimes that information comes fast, and we will, of course, communicate widely, but I wanted you to hear from me here. So again, lots of great things happening, lots of important work taking place, and we'll just continue to keep you updated as we go forward. And one last thing, we heard it this evening, but I want to say it as well. I've communicated to all of our community, our staff community, something that we've started and we're going to continue is whenever we're in negotiations with any of our union groups, we will regularly communicate with our staff and our parent community regarding what's happening. We've updated our negotiations page on the website. Our communications director, Alana Israel Samuels, will be sure that that page is updated. We'll ensure to send links out so people know when information is there. And again, I think it's an important part of our important work. We are hopeful that the positive negotiations will continue and that our community can remain informed, which is what the purpose of that process is. Thanks, President Ordway, for the time.
Great, thank you, Superintendent Malloy. And I have one more card, right? Yes, Helen.
This comment is for Board Member Brad. Board Member Brad, next time, I would like you to please invite me to the Gay Student Association. I'm a straight, I'm a Christian, and I'm a yellow race, but I would like to know more about the Gay Student Association because according to the language that you guys are revising now, that will be imposing on students, it is an impossible society that you guys are going to require each other to live in. For example, unwelcoming comments. I don't know. These days, anime are very popular among students. I don't know when is, like a little really, it's just a comment is going to set off all of a sudden suspension and things like that. I would like to know in what capacity a Christian, straight, yellow family might offend your community. And by all means, I want to avoid that because I don't want trouble for my students. And I want them to have a chance to grow up and be a human being in this society, if possible. I'm begging you, please invite me. Because I don't know really. And now I don't even know. Like, if I walk in, since when is she, her, hers equivalent to gay? So I must be he, his. I'm so confused. And if I'm confused, I'm sure students are even more confused. And I don't want all of a sudden to have my student yanked out of classroom just because we don't have enough money to go to private schools. Please invite me. I want to respect your community and I want to know how. Please educate me. Thank you.
Thank you. It was actually through the San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition that there was a presentation on LGBTQ plus youth and how to support them. I would suggest that you go to the Human Rights Campaign, their website, hrc.org, I believe. You can find lots of information and other resources that might help educate you and your family about the LGBTQ plus community and pronouns and various other things. Thank you. hrc.org, I believe it's org. It might be com. It stands for Human Rights Campaign. No, it's a national organization. Okay, the PFLAG SRV dot maybe org, maybe com. If you Google PFLAG San Ramon Valley, you'll find their local website, and that'll give you resources, local resources. Yep.
Okay, and I think with that, I'm adjourning the meeting. Are we going? Okay, so we are returning actually into close, but we won't have a report to report out. So adjourning open, and we're going back into closed session. Thanks.
Mr. Rosinski, can I put